And good afternoon, everybody. Today we're going to talk about maybe new ways for you to look at the sales process that you use in your business, perhaps how you can eliminate bidding, and how you can perhaps make more money at the same time. First, I'd like to start off by talking about schema. We all have a schema. Schema is our way of interpreting the world around us. But the key about schema is that our schema comes from experience. We can read a book, we can sit in a class, we can even attend today's webinar, and we'll gain knowledge. However, schema only comes from experience. So if we learn something new, we'll only gain schema about that new thing by trying it, by experimenting with it. So the key about schema allows us to take shortcuts in everything we do, whether it's in our personal lives or in our business. It's our past experiences that help us perhaps make good, quick decisions about what we should do and what we shouldn't do. But one of the things about schema could be that it might also get in the way of allowing new ideas to enter into our brains, enter into how we do business. The idea is that our previous schema, our experience with other things says to us, hey, wait a minute, this is a new thing. I don't know anything about that. Naturally, it makes us hesitant. It's one of the reasons why as a human race we still exist, because we have that schema. We have that great skill of learning from our previous experiences. So the thing is, if you want to learn something new and you let your schema get in the way, if you say, hey, that won't work in my area, Shawn, you don't know what it's like in my marketplace. Well, first off, you'd be amazed at how many times I hear that from different people all around the country, like every one of them works in a unique marketplace. And truthfully, they are unique, but you know what? Not enough that we have to worry about your schema and how you're going to build your business. So I would ask for today, perhaps entertain maybe some new ways of looking at your business. Give them a try. If you like what you experience, perhaps you'll allow your schema to evolve and maybe you'll find a new way of doing business, something that will work better for you and something that might even help you make more money. First, before we get started, there's a few sales realities, maybe some considerations I'd like to put out there on the table before we get going. First off, that one called buyers are liars, right? There's actually, I think somebody jokingly said the 11th commandment is that you can lie to a salesperson and still go to heaven. The point being is that we've all been conditioned right from the time of childhood that it's actually okay to lie to a salesperson. And my opinion, and other people have shared it with me, is that perhaps we learn how to lie by watching and observing our parents. Our parents are the ones that teach us. They talk about how their approach is going to be when they're looking to buy a car, or maybe they're going to interact about buying a remodeling project or something like that. And they talk about how they're going to mislead the salesperson right in front of their children. And why wouldn't children think it's okay that you can lie to a salesperson? It's just a natural thing you do. So kind of like Wilson, if you look at the picture I have up on the screen there, Wilson from that show Home Improvement, if you remember that, if you got exposed to that, that guy never revealed himself above his nose, right? So think about the fact that prospects, when they first contact you, they're afraid perhaps to reveal real information to you. Perhaps they think you're going to take advantage of that information and use it against them to get more money out of them, perhaps get them to buy something that they really don't need or shouldn't have bought in to begin with. So what am I saying? I'm saying, you know what, let's not make them bad people because they lie to us. All of society seems to do that. It seems to be okay when you're in front of a salesperson. What I'm saying is perhaps what we need to do with our prospects is find a way to gain their trust. Find a way to help them realize that it's okay to be open and honest with us, to talk about really what are their true purposes for their remodeling project, how are they planning on making decisions, what budget do they have to take care of their problem, why would they, say, take the risk of sharing those things with you, discussing those things with you if they don't trust you yet. So, as a salesperson, I'm going to ask you to perhaps consider building that trust, gaining the opportunity to have those conversations with your prospects, not just assuming that they're going to give you that opportunity and not just getting mad at them because they lied to you. Remember, we were all taught perhaps by our parents that it's okay to lie to a salesperson. So my experience as a contractor, but also as a coach helping other contractors, has been that there are so many advantages of a sales system. So many of us go to school to learn the construction side of things, but when I ask, I usually find there's less than 1% to 2% of remodeling business owners in any live event that I do that have actually taken any form of formal sales training. I'm not talking about just a seminar or something like that, but actual real sales training where you learn a system, you stick with and adopt that system, not adapt it to how you want to sell or how your company works, but rather you use the system as it was designed so that you can get the results from that system as the system was designed. So we'll talk a little bit more as a sales system as we go through today's webinar, but I really want to make it clear, if you're going to deal with prospects and you want to pre-qualify them to see if they're the right people for you and your business to work with, a sales system is certainly one way to put that filter in place. Now, something else to think about. A lot of times I talk to contractors and say, hey, Shawn, we don't need to worry about that. That's never happened. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Do you know how many times I've heard that and they do nothing to get ready and then they get to the bridge? And you know what? Aren't they assuming there's going to be a bridge there? Like, meaning, in other words, if we run into a challenge or our prospects or our clients ask us to do something that's not part of how we do business, what are you going to do? Aren't you assuming there's a bridge there with a deck on it so you're going to get over that bridge and get to the other side? I don't know. I'm thinking that maybe it makes sense to have a plan for what you want to have happen rather than being subject to whatever it is your client or your prospect decides is going to happen. So one of my rules in terms of doing business and certainly in terms of selling is either you can set up what you want to have happen or you'll simply have to decide and resign yourself to the fact that you're going to have to settle for what you get. So in other words, if you don't tell a prospect how you do business, how your design process works, what you charge for and what you don't, well, you might be surprised as to what that prospect was expecting. And now you're at a bridge, and you know what? There might not be any decking on it. Neither of you may be able to get across to the other side and come to a meeting of the minds. Again, perhaps an advantage of a selling system, one, you have to have a business system to sell. And then secondly, a sales system that helps you articulate it and helps you help other people decide and figure out whether or not that system is going to work for them. Here's something else I would ask you to maybe think about. Maybe perhaps try and see if you're willing to allow your schema to evolve. Consumers don't want to be sold. They want help buying. Imagine if you were a consumer buying a remodeling project. We may not see them, we may not see a $70,000 to $100,000 interior renovation like a kitchen or something like that as very expensive or a high-ticket job to us. But to any homeowner, that kind of money is a lot of money. Heck, $20,000 could be a lot of money to certain homeowners remodeling their kitchens or their bathrooms. So what I'm suggesting is rather than be looked at as that salesperson trying to convince them what to do, basically sell them the used car you have on your lot because that's the only thing you have, I'm suggesting instead maybe come across as somebody that's there to help them buy, to help them through the decision-making process. What do I need to do? What are my options that I could consider? How can I compare those options one against the other? So instead of maybe convincing them what they should do, I'm suggesting that your sales process should work and help them figure out what they should do. Help them buy something from you rather than you try to sell something to them. So that sales system should, instead of maybe tell or convince somebody what to do, it should help them make confident decisions. Somebody else coined the phrase decision engineer. That's how I would ask you to think about it. Your goal as a remodeler, your goal as a remodeling business owner, but certainly your goal if you're the one selling the remodeling, is to become a decision engineer. So think about it. Have you been trying to convince people to do something? Maybe instead, right, if you don't have the schema for this, maybe you should try to help them figure out what they need to do instead of trying to convince them of what they're going to do. That would make you a decision engineer. Well, if you want to stop bidding or you want to avoid, maybe start getting away from the whole bidding thing, especially if you feel like a commodity, right? Think about that. If the consumer thinks of you as a contractor, thinks of the project you're doing for them as a commodity, why would they pay more? Why wouldn't they entertain trying to get the lowest price? I don't know about you, but my pickup truck, it doesn't deserve anything better than regular gasoline. And you know what? It runs fine, it seems like, no matter what brand of regular gasoline I put in there, so why would I pay any more? But on the other hand, I also have a 64 Impala SS. So any of you know that know classic cars, that car runs a heck of a lot better on super high-test gas. And you know what? For the amount of gas I put in that car every year, I'm going to put the best gas I can. So I drive to find the best gas I can put in there, not the cheapest. But keep in mind, I have a different motivation for the way I want to service, the way I want to perhaps own and be proud of that old car, compared to I look at my pickup truck as a utility tool. Why would I invest extra money in the utility tool? On the other hand, if I'm really proud of my car, just like a lot of people are proud of their homes and their kitchens, maybe they're willing to spend some discretionary money to get the right thing. So a couple of things to think about in terms of either stopping or avoiding bidding. How about first off, just resign to yourself that you're just not going to do it anymore. You're going to take yourself out of that bidding game. Now, some of you are saying, oh, sure, Shawn, that's easy, but how am I supposed to do that? Well, you know what? Your current schema doesn't have a way for you to do that. So perhaps you're going to have to listen in today on what I might suggest you consider, look into some additional options, research both the things I share today and maybe some of the things you come up on your own, and then try it. Gain some schema for how it possibly could work, right? So just maybe decide I'm just not going to bid anymore. At what point will I stop doing that? Then I also suggest you define how you're going to do business. Right? If you're going to sell how you do business instead of selling your kitchen, then you've got to decide what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Who are you going to service? What type of projects are you going to do for those people? You've got to decide how you're going to do business, and then you've got to stick to it. Because if you decide how you're going to do business and you let a few people convince you to do something different, well, aren't they just going to let their referrals know if they talk to you enough, they can convince you to move away from how you say you want to do business and do it their way? So I'm suggesting figure out how you want to do business, be confident about it, and then stick to it. Then make sure you're targeting the right customers. Best way to do that, perhaps, was to make sure that they know how you're going to do business and that they're willing to do business your way of doing business first rather than they're willing to accept your price first. What good is it if the customer will accept your price, but they won't go along with how you're going to do business? They're going to tell you how they're going to do business. So target the right customers. I also suggest that you move towards creating the plans rather than taking the plans. I find too often consumers who hire another firm perhaps to do the design work, whether that's a designer or an architect, somebody to do the design, well, then they want to use that design to give them the ability to bid out the project to see what kind of prices the project might come in at. So that's fine. That may work for some people, and even you as a contractor may decide that that's a good way for you to do business, and it can be if you have a good way of administering that. On the other hand, you may say, you know what, I'm just not going to be working off anybody else's plans. If you create the plans and you maintain ownership of those plans until your prospect becomes a customer and signs a construction contract, well, then they can't bid those plans out to anybody else. Nobody else would be able to bid against your project. So in order to do that, though, what I found works really well is you have to design to a budget and budget as you design. So this is definitely going to require you to establish a realistic budget that works for both you and your client before the design starts, and then to make sure that you're budgeting the project as you design. So in other words, you're doing your estimate as you're designing the project to make sure the project is going to be within the budget both you and the homeowner have agreed to. Again, to protect all this, you've got to keep your plans and specifications until the customer commits, and as they said in my sales training program, until the check clears and you know it's real.